I'd like to welcome you all here today. I'd like to start by quickly presenting our speakers and mentioning a couple of housekeeping rules. This is our webinar on design thinking, very interesting topic, and I'm sure we look forward to learning more about it and learning about how to apply it across the board and not just in one industry or the other, but it's actually a science. There's a science behind it. So without further ado, I'd like to present Heba Gebreel. Heba is a member of She's Arab, and she has very kindly volunteered to help us put this webinar together. She's a customer marketing specialist at Hager Group. She specializes in building customer strategies focused on customer experience and insights for the region Amaniyat, which is the Americas, Middle East, Africa, and Turkey. In addition, she's part of a new department called the FabCat, Future Application Catalyst, to follow customer needs with the change in technology and act as a catalyst to accelerate change to align with the group's vision of making people's lives safer, cleaner, and enjoyable. Her professional areas of expertise are supporting the strategy development of a variety of clean energy technologies and energy transition in MENA region. She's passionate and active to support the energy transition, and she's been awarded the Smart Energy Rising Star Award at the Women Powering Smart Energy 2020 event in London. We also have with us Bryony Gaschy. Bryony is a designer at Hager Group Design Studio with a strong experience in design thinking, understanding and articulating user insights. She delivers her design expertise on a wide variety of projects, ranging from industrialized products to exploratory projects. Her professional skills are researching design problems and using a process of making, visualizing, prototyping, and demonstrating ideas to create desirable user experiences. Bryony carries a master's degree in industrial and product design from l'École de Design at Nantes Atlantique. She's been awarded the IF Design Award 2014 for Steelcase's Be Free range, which is an office furniture system that aims at creating small neighborhoods within the workplace. Heba and Bryony are both based in France, are part of Hager Group's Agile community to spread new ways of working and thinking and help their colleagues defining out-of-the-box ideas for their projects and promoting the adoption of agility. We welcome you both with us today, Heba and Bryony. And without further ado, I would like to move the floor to you, but I would just like to mention that there's a Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen. So please don't shy away from sharing your questions as of now while they are presenting and speaking. And we will hopefully address them all towards the end of the talk. So thank you. Heba, please.
Thank you, Summer, and thank you for She's Arab for hosting our webinar today. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us, and I hope you and your families are fine and doing well. So today, we would like to talk to you about design thinking. What is it? How it works, and how you can get yourself started. We will share a few principles and concepts so you can start to work on your projects. So if we go in the first slide, design thinking. Yes, no, the one, please. So design thinking question mark. What are we talking about? Design thinking is a process that, yes. Design thinking is a process in which we seek to understand users, assume their challenges, identify problem-solving strategies, and out-of-the-box solutions that might not be instantly clear with our initial level of understanding. That's quite a lot of words for a design thinking beginner. So I propose we can go through the concepts, understand it better, and then try to read it again. And you will see it will look different. So let's go with the concepts, please. Design thinking, it's a human-centric mindset. Yes, it's a methodology that really about practicing deep empathy about people. When we say deep empathy about people, means that you put yourself in the people's shoes and try to experience their challenges, their experience, and their needs towards your project, your product, or whatsoever you are trying to offer. Because by the end, it's not about how fancy is your product or projects towards your customers. Actually, it's more how your product will add value to customers. So if you are a startup, if you are a business owner, if you are working in any other business field, understanding the user insights and really developing a strategy based on customer insights will help you to build the best strategy for your business. Another concept is a problem-solving approach. As I mentioned before, after practicing empathy, you will define a lot of user cases, like challenges with my service, challenges with my product. And then you will ask yourself the famous question, what if? What if I add this option to be able to make this experience better? What if I remove this option because it really has no added value for my resources? So after really asking yourself what if question, you will find yourself with different scenarios based on problem solving approach and allow you to build the right strategies. Then if we go on the other slide. So design thinking is out of the box. This is really interesting because all of us as a specialist, we tend to develop pattern of thinking, pattern of way of thinking based on our previous experience, previous projects, and all of your actions. So when you work on a new project, similar to any of your other projects, then you tend to think the same way. And we have a lack of innovative ideas and lack of out of the box. So design thinking allow you, go back. Design thinking allow you to really step back and really have a view around your project, not only from your point of view, but from the whole overview. And I have a story to illustrate this point to you. If we go in the next slide. Yes. I have a small story called The Focused Mind versus the Fresh Mind, just to illustrate how really being focused on a problem can block us from the simplest solution. So here, there was a car, a truck, which got stuck under a low bridge and had a huge accident. You can see here on the upper part of the car. You can see really from my title. Anyway, so this car caused a huge traffic. And then all the drivers around, from the cars around, really gathered and started to debate how to make the car go faster. And they were all focused on the part which was really attached to the bridge and thinking how to dislodge this truck from the bridge. So another person who was really not impacted by the accident passed by, looked at them, he looked at the truck and at the bridge, and then he mentioned, but why not you just remove the air from the tires? Really as simple as that, the solution was tested and the car managed to move without extra damage, more than the damage from the first accident. And this really illustrates that sometimes the simplest solutions we could really not clear for us because of our focused mind. So design thinking help you to practice empathy, help you to really have a bigger view about your target users, about your target people, and make you find out of your box ideas. So if we come back again to this slide and we'll try to read it, you will find it's much easier now. Design thinking, it's a process in which we seek to understand users, assume their challenges, needs, pain points, identify strategies and problem-solving strategies and out-of-the-box solutions that might not be instantly clear with our initial level of understanding. So this was a general introduction to the concepts of design thinking, and now I'm going to leave you with the expert, Bryony. Please take it from here. Thank you.
Okay, so we're ready to go a little bit deeper. Thanks for this great introduction, Heba. Well, design thinking often is illustrated by a wall of post-its. This is maybe what brought you to this presentation today. Is you might have come across people sticking post-its on walls and trying to figure out what they're doing, or being in a workshop, and you might have found that intriguing and want to know a little bit more about it. But as Heba was pointing out, there's a lot of questions that come up quite quickly. You're wondering where to start. Maybe you can go to the next slide. So you're wondering where to start, and why would you want to do design thinking, and how, and what kind of team do you need? What comes first, what comes next? So the idea of this session is really to give you an overall look on what design thinking is and what it means to do design thinking, so that later on maybe you can dig deeper and see what you could use design thinking for within your projects or within your professional life. So design thinking, as Heba put it in the beginning, is really to innovate. You can go to the next slide. Innovation is about evolution. We innovate because we evolve, and we evolve because we innovate. Everything is linked, and design thinking is really there to go towards innovation, finding out of the box ideas. And nowadays this evolution is even ever more fast, as we are seeing the contraction of space and time. If we go to the next slide, we can see, for instance, this map of France that is comparing the geographical distances from towns to Paris, and also the time to get to Paris by train. And we can see how time and space are contracted physically in this case, and making a different type of map of France. And this in 2018. So as this changes our world in the way we communicate and how we are connected, the transport innovation, communication innovation, technological innovation is making our world becoming fast and more efficient. And we've kind of coming to the end of the runway of maximizing productivity and re-engineering processes. So we're trying to find new ways of innovating. A decade ago, a company could thrive on a solid technological base, when today it's becoming obsolete from one day to the next. So we're trying to find new ways to innovate, and new ways of finding new markets. As we are becoming more connected, internet and networking have made knowledge impossible to accumulate as well. So we're facing new problems. So when we look at innovation and the drivers for innovation, we see that we innovate for economical reasons, to build new businesses and to face competitions, but also to imagine better tomorrows. To think new services, to new products corresponding to our developing society. As we go into trying to describe what innovation is, some people put it in this way: innovation is a long, unpredictable and uncontrollable process that results from the fortuitous and random. So basically, it's very random and very obscure what happens. So in other ways, it could look like this. And when it looks like this, we could say it's a bit like magic, what happens. Well, what design thinking is trying to do is that it does have a little bit, innovation does have a little bit of magic to it. But on the other hand, we can create the conditions of emergence of innovation. We can put things in order to be able to step by step bring our minds to be in the state to create innovation and to find where innovation can happen. So design thinking is only one process amongst many other of making it possible and finding these new ideas. So we will see in the design thinking approach, it makes this stage of fortuitous to generate, and the hazard, taking the hazard out of what innovation is. Because design thinking is a systematic approach to problem solving. Everyone has the power to do it. You just need to figure out how to go through it and how to use it. As Heba was saying, it starts with customers and the ability to create a better future for them. It acknowledges that we probably won't get it right the first time, and that one needs to experiment to develop new ideas, just like designers do. And that's where the design part comes in. That's what designers have been doing since the early 17th century. So can we go back to the slide before, please? Yeah, thank you. So that's what designers have been doing since the early 19th century. Design has been seen as a way of humanizing technology, starting with the notion of industrial aesthetics and then industrial design with a greater introduction of production processes. Designers are called upon to give shape and develop new methods to use new technologies of objects, linking engineers, ergonomics, and anthropologists. So we see through the evolution of design why design thinking has emerged from design. It's always been in the DNA of design to go towards this. And it's only recently that design thinking could really be born because we understood that the way that designers thought could be applied to other areas, other businesses, and to use these methodologies that was being known to designers to other areas of innovation. So to talk a little bit more about design itself, and this is a slide I use a lot when I'm talking to non-English native speakers, is the word design itself carries a lot of meaning in English. Design can be a concept, and it's also the activity of designing. It can be the intent that we give to something, and it is also the outcome. So design carries a lot of meaning within this word, within the word itself. And I think this sentence kind of synthesizes it quite well. Design also has multiple disciplines. We have graphic design, product design, space design, service design, interaction design, and most recently, user experience design, to show you the different applications of design within the different skill sets that designers have. But be it product design or service design, the toolkit that designers use is more or less the same. The way they think, the way we do things. And that's where design thinking is really coming from. There's this famous triad that has been brought up by the D School that works on design thinking, and that kind of really creates the basis for the way we look at things. The first circle is technology. We look at the feasibility of the solution or the product that we're designing. Then we have the business aspect, the viability, and the human values. It's really an important solid base to think about design thinking and thinking of those different areas. So the human value part was not so much considered maybe 20 years ago, but it's an area that's been growing and growing throughout the years and being more and more important in the way we see things and do things. So between these different areas of expertise, we also have the cross sections that are very important the cross-section between technology and business will be the area of manufacturing, for instance. If you can just go, yeah. Manufacturing. The cross-section between business and human values will be everything that's got to do with organizational behaviors, management team, human resources, and the cross-section between technology and human values will be more about the design and interactivity. So all these things link together, and the central point that you see here, this is where the perfect spot to be to look at design innovation. This is what we're trying to build on, and designers in their expertise kind of go into these different areas using knowledge in technology, knowledge in human values, and knowledge in business to create these new ideas. Quite like this saying that says design primarily shapes relationships rather than just things, relationships that need to be useful. It shows the distance between the design, the word design that we usually qualify, and what the real expectation of design is. And when entering design school, just to explain a little bit how designers think, we are taught to think differently. The traditional way we are taught to think as students is that given a set of information, you do a type of convergent thinking towards one solution and try to develop the best solution based on that. As designers, this system is deconstructed to bring the students to think differently and to first think divergently. And we use this other diagram where we start from an initial problem or statement work, and the first exercise is to think divergently, to discover, to open our minds, to go and see other areas of expertise, to gather as much knowledge as we can on a given problem, and then to converge, and then to select and come down to defining the problem and understanding more about it. So it is a different way of thinking, and it's a different way of training your mind to first think divergently and then think convergently. And this is an exercise that needs to be done. It doesn't come necessarily at first shot. It takes some practice and it takes some time to go there, but it really helps try to understand the wide variety of possibilities that are open when given a specific topic. So design thinking in itself was formalized and promoted by a parallel auto design agency called IDEO, founded by Tim Brown and David Kelly, that started really to formalize it and to put it down and to teach it in schools, specifically the D school. So design thinking is a human-centric approach to innovation that draws from the designer's toolkit to integrate the need of people, the possibilities of technology, and the requirements for business success. So in this definition, we find, again, the triad of technology, business, and human values. We understand that it's really the toolkit, the tools, the elements from what designers have been building for the last century, to adapt it to other businesses and to bring that way of thinking to other areas, like I said earlier. And Tim Brown and David Kelly believed that they could bridge the design methodologies to business issues, and that's why they started to share that knowledge. And since then, design thinking has gained a lot of traction. As you can see here on the slide, this is the Google findings of design thinking process. There's a lot of information out there. It's very open source, so you can find a lot of things and a lot of tools to practice design, to learn about design thinking. I'll help you navigate a little bit through all of these elements, but most of it is really saying the same, just in different ways, and different ways of organizing the thinking. So the way we present it at Hager is we like to use this convergent and divergent and convergent thinking diagram. Design thinking methodology also implies a lot of iterative thinking, going through these cycles of divergent and convergent thinking, and going through problem solving. Yeah, so we have first the outline, then we go through processes of understanding what the problem is about. Then there's the creation process, and finally there's the delivering part. So again, going down to a specific solution point of view. If you can go to the next slide. Yeah, and then we can pivot back. Before we get started on the method itself, you really need to be in the right state of mind. You need to well, because we're human after all, above all, and the culture that we carry is an important part of us, and it's an important part of the way we think. And whatever the process, whatever the methods, whatever the methodology that you put in place, you need to get the right state of mind, and you need to get the right culture first, because then otherwise your efforts won't be so fructuous as they could be. And as I say, the culture eats the process for lunch. So what kind of mindset are we thinking about? So this is kind of the toolbox of the mindsets that the D-School put together to understand a little bit more what we mean by the mindset. The first one, and the most important of all, is focus on human values, because the human always has to be in the center of everything you do. And it's important to have that, because in the process of innovation or developing ideas, we might kind of start moving away from that. So we need to come back to the human every time. And that's the empathy part. We have to be disruptive and ask the right questions. Always ask why. Why are we doing this? You know, dare to go down to the root of what you're seeing, what you're observing, and why we do things a certain way. And don't take anything as a given. But to the opposite, you shouldn't be too much the devil's advocate either, because we need to be building on other people's ideas. The next topic is getting exposure. Be an observer, be a learner. So you have to be in a state of mind where you are not the one that's the most knowledgeable about the topic. You have to go out and learn from others and collect the maximum of information you can, so that you're really going out there. Another aspect that's really close to what designers do is build to think. And we'll see how building to think is not only the topic of designers. Anybody can really go in and build to think, because building is where you will learn by doing, and you'll get a lot of information from that. Your idea also gets more presence. They say that a good indicator of companies that do innovation, that have innovation potential, is to evaluate its average time until the first prototype or model, for instance. Show and tell, or show and don't tell, is about getting feedback on your idea. For the show and tell part is it's helping you getting your story straight, see where are the cracks and where it could be improved. And show and don't tell is how, and let people interact with your idea, see how it creates new ways of looking at it. The last aspect is collaborate and co-creating. The idea of being connected to others and sharing your ideas, because your ideas might seed in someone else's mind and evolve and grow in an unexpected way. And that's also where innovation happens. Also, building on other people's ideas is one of the mindsets that is really important in design thinking. The way of looking at this, there's a very interesting book that's called 10 Faces of Innovation, written by Tom Kelly, that goes into 10 different types of innovators, because we all interact in a different way. And when you're creating a co-creating team, the idea is to have a variety of different typologies of thinkers, and not to have two similar people on your team. You need to have this diversity to create a dynamic that's really positive. And so you can really get the inspiration from this book to understand what type of, first of all, what type of innovator you are, and what type of innovators are your collaborators. So you can really create a very interesting, diverse team for your brainstorming sessions, for instance. What you want is that diversity. So now if we go a little bit deeper in the different steps of the process, as we said, there's three main phases. There's the understanding phase, there's the creating phase, and there's the delivering, making phase. And we'll see step by step each one of those. But let's focus first on the outline. This one is very important because it's your starting point. It's about describing your problem, your opportunity, or your challenge. It's also a way of stating your ambition. It's not describing your solution. This is where most people get it wrong. We don't want a fast description of the solution. We don't want to see what's at the end of the road. We just want to know where we are starting from. So it's more about kind of framing what are the topics you want to learn about, what do you wonder, what are the ideas that are worth investigating. That it has to be an open mind type of outline, and it has to be user-centered as well. So if you go to the next slide, it really putting forward that the problem, well stated, is a problem half solved. I don't know how many of you out there have done a project, come to the end of it, and realizing that actually we answered the question, but the question wasn't the right one that we were asking at the beginning, and we have to start all over again because we've discovered elements along the road that have changed the way of seeing the problem stated. So the idea is really to get it right at the beginning to have the best process. Then we go into the empathize phase. This is the discovering phase, is understanding who your users are and going into their shoes, doing observation of what they're doing, what they're saying, what they're thinking. You can use a mind mapping, you can use empathy map, you can also find those tools online to be able to organize your thinking and to really, again, get exposure, go out there and see what's happening with your users. Observation is very interested to get little insights that you might not get through interviews, for instance. So the secret of audience insight is non-obtrusive observation, is trying to see the little things that might have slipped and not have been seen by anyone else, and be able to crossing different different observations between your users. Another tool that you can use is customer journey to cover the different pain points that have not been addressed. Once you believe you've captured enough knowledge from your users, and they can be from different areas, not only the end user, but also the people that interact with your service or product in the meantime. Once you've gathered that knowledge, you need to be able to organize it, and you need to be able to sort through your ideas and see where there might be things that collect together and come together to create a new idea. So this is the define phase. It's starting to synthesize your finding and seeing patterns that emerge. And this is where it's important to have a different type of team that look at the content and on which you can share with these people, because you might be looking at the same information, but not seeing it exactly the same way, or at least understanding or seeing the same patterns. So exchanging on that is very important. Insights are not magic. They don't jump up at you. They really are hidden, and you need to dig to find them. They don't fall from trees, and they are hard won. They don't come as obvious as that. But once you start digging and exchanging with your co-workers on those, you'll find what surprises you in what you've discovered, and trying to find new needs that you could answer. Then you go into the ideate phase. So remember, we're back into opening the topic again. We're not going down in a convergent way. We're taking what we've defined is the area of where we want to solve the problem for. And now we're reopening. We're trying to find new ideas. So this is, again, we're trying to have an open mind on all the possibilities. We don't want to close them up just yet. And this relates, you go back to your findings, go back to what you've researched, and maybe you'll need to get more information and get more to learn more about your user. You might want to connect again with the people you saw. And so there's a few tools here again that come into the ideation phase. This is the phase where you might want to do a brainstorming session with different teams. It's important here to not block any ideas that come up. There's no bad idea. A crazy idea to you could actually be seen by somebody else like something completely feasible. So anything that comes to mind needs to be said and expressed. Visualization is something very important in this phase, because it enables to converge on the same comprehension of an idea or a concept, especially in multicultural cases. Wording can be not understood when it's written, whereas pictures are much more vastly understood. So it expresses also the functional and emotional side of an idea. Brainstorming sessions also have a specific way of being done. So for the first stages, if it's the first time you're doing this, we advise to have somebody that's a facilitator that will help you go through the process and give rhythm to the brainstorming session. And we want to come away from the idea that design thinking is a one-day workshop, which is not. It's a longer process, and there's different ways of doing it. But that's often what stays in people's minds. The modeling, and I was saying that we build to make, the modeling aspect is very important, making mock-ups. And mock-ups are not only physical mock-ups that we're talking about any type of mock-up. It can be a chart, it can be a visual, it can be a scenario, it can be here we're seeing on the image, it can be an application, which are just line drawings of the application. It's not a real, we're not using a real phone at this point. The idea with mockups is to do it as early and as fast as possible, so that you learn by doing these mockups. It's really the first step of uncovering potential. Here is an example of a mockup, and a very early mockup of an electrical installation with a piece of paper, a pen, and a line drawing on a piece of paper and parts scattered around. So you can learn already a lot by doing that. And you mustn't train yourself by going into modeling quite early. And it has to be cheap and easy to be able to break, because then you'll have more ability to really play with the idea. And building a mockup is giving form to the idea. You'll see that if you've got a mockup, you'll be able to communicate with people much easier about the content. It's allowing yourself to learn from it and evaluate against other ideas and improving it as you go along. So modeling can really be within the ideation process, and you can really go back and forth between the ideation and the mock-up, and you can actually do it during the brainstorming as well, and having that as a dynamic session. You can go onto YouTube and check out the McDonald's video on design thinking, how they did design thinking to organize the McDonald's restaurant in the early days of McDonald's. When you've got something when you start kind of getting to a point where you've eliminated some ideas and you're trying to concentrate on maybe a few that you think that are worth building on, and they're gaining strength, you might want to go out there and test those ideas. And that testing will able to refine your concept or your solution and make it better. So let your user really experience your prototype. You mustn't influence him, just like when you're doing a tasting session. You want to be able to have your user to have an open mind and not be influenced by what you think, because you have the background of your knowledge of the project. So you'll have a different type of point of view. So you want your user to really experience your product maybe for the first time, and have, and again, be the observer and be the outside eye on it. This is an example of UX testing where we're looking at where the user is how the user is interacting with the application. Where is he clicking first? Where is he looking for the information? And that will bring a lot of rich information on the person developing, in this case, the application. So don't influence the user when you're doing testing. Have him maybe talk him through the experience, so you can capture a lot of information from that, and don't correct what he's doing. This is a great saying about testing. So when you prototype as if you're thinking you're building the right thing, but when you test, what you're looking at is what's going wrong and all the things that you can make better on your prototype. So you have to test as if you're doing things wrong. So it gives you a different point of view of your product or service. And testing is about turning a wild guess into an educated one. Testing doesn't necessarily validate your proposal. It's not a kind of, okay, it's good, it's not a stamp and it's good to go. It's just that you had this idea and you're evaluating it with users, and it just makes it a little bit more viable than it was before. But then you still have the hat of the expert within your project, and you are the one that really has the validation in your hands at the end. So through all these efforts of the design thinking process, come to the end of the testing, you've probably got in hand something that's that you trust is a great idea, or at least you've gone through the process of getting to that point. And what we call it is you have a point of view. You can state that point of view, and it's been forged for yourself, and you're ready to share that point of view with your stakeholders. When you do that, think to bring them along and the complete journey that you've been through. Give them the complete picture and not just the end result picture, which is very important. But at this stage, that doesn't mean that you're finished. Maybe at this stage you decide, or you discover that you need to learn more, and this is where we say we pivot or persevere. You would persevere if the package is sound enough to be able to continue and go into development, or at this point you think, well, actually we've uncovered another area of business or another area of knowledge that we haven't researched, and that therefore we'd have to start the process again and go back into empathize because we've got more research to be done. So we've gone through the process of understanding, creating, modeling, and testing, and at this point we could decide to pivot, persevere, as I said, continuing the process or going back to empathize or to any of the stages beforehand to be able to refine or to rethink maybe our first statement. And so I think now we're ready for a Q&A.
Yes, we certainly are. Thank you for a wonderful presentation. We already have questions that started coming in. There's a question, first, of course, a lot of the members are saying, thank you for an in-depth presentation. What are the key differences between a customer journey and a value stream?
I'm not very knowledgeable on the value stream, but a customer journey really goes into the step-by-step life of a user, for instance, but it really tries to go really, really broad. It can be really on what is the first point of contact and even what happens before that. So it really depends on what your project is looking at. But the idea of the customer journey is really to break down in as many little steps as possible and on what's happening in your service or in your design, to be able to understand each point of decision or what's happening at different times, because often and you can discuss that with the user himself or the participant, so that you maybe have some areas where you'll discover something new about what he's doing because he thinks it's obvious. Like, well, I always do that. Well, we didn't write it down. And why do you always do that? And then again, dig on the why question and go deeper in that.
It's very helpful. I have an interesting question here. It says, how long would you suggest spending on each stage of the design thinking process?
That would really, really depend on the type of project you're doing, and on the ambition part, like I was saying at the beginning. It can go from a few months to a few years, because it depends on the ambition you're going for, again, what you want to do is to package your thinking in smaller packages if it's becoming too big. And that's why it's important to state your problem first and to get a sizable project or ambition that you think you can do in just several months. And then you'll be able to go through the process much faster, so that you get into a point where you pivot or persevere earlier. But then that also means that you can circle back. So you have to accept also the fact of circling back and saying, well, we've done all the process, but we've ended up at a point where we can decide that it's not sufficient and come back.
Got it. I really, really like this question. If you are a solopreneur, you're on your own, how do you ideate without a diverse team? Because you mentioned, you should bring the team together. No idea is a bad idea. When you're all alone, how do you do that?
Again, it's by getting exposure. Is finding people that might not be within the company, but there's many different ways of going out there and getting exposure. Again, when you start as a designer, you go and see your family, your parents, your friends, and you expose your ideas to them, and you're already getting feedback. And if you're an entrepreneur on your own, you still want to go out there and get exposure for your idea, see if there's any traction for other areas of business or innovation. And you can always find somebody maybe that can give you that type of feedback, and you want to sparring partner or somebody that can send you back an image of what you're showing to them.
Okay.
And you can use your users as well. I mean, if you go out and test,
so you can run surveys or focus groups, or
definitely, or depending on who your public is or who your audience is, you can go out and share the ideas with them, and you'll always get some feedback from that. And if you start the discussion with them, they might have new ideas to bring to you.
Okay, great. That we have a number of questions. I hope we have time to go through them. In a design thinking process, when do you take budget in account? We didn't talk about budget while talking about the process. So do you think it should be considered at the beginning, at the design phase, or really when you come to the prototyping stage? I would like to get also Heba's reflections on that as well.
Yeah, Heba's got some experience also on specific projects. Budget, we have budget that's considered right at the beginning. Again, when you state the ambition, maybe you already have an idea of what type of testing you want to do, and how you want to connect with users. Prototyping shouldn't take a lot of budget. Prototyping should really be quick, easy, crafty, and that's not where you'll be spending a lot of budget on, because it has to be really lightweight. I mean, depending again on the complexity of the project, but you don't want to make it too heavy, because again, the prototyping phase, you want to be able to hack the idea afterwards. So if it's too good, too pristine, you've spent too much budget on it, you won't be able to dig into the idea, change it and modify it. And you have to be able to allow yourself for that. So don't spend too much budget on the prototyping. But it's an overall envelope, I'd say, for the budget, and it's depending on the ambition of the project, but it shouldn't ask too much budget.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any comments on that, Heba, that you'd like from your experience with using design thinking?
Normally for sales and marketing, we really don't go through prototyping. We practice more the user insights. We collect more information, we do a lot of workshops, we brainstorm. So there is not really a dedicated budget when I need to collect insights.
So really it's more like a way of thinking, is
Yes,
more
it's
the
a
more
mindset.
Yeah.
Yes.
And Heba, we have a specific actually question that perhaps you can address, which is how do you see its use in developing marketing strategies? So you just mentioned especially how to collect information and so on, but how to really come up with the strategy? How do you use design thinking? How do you apply it? Tell us more.
It's super essential for developing our marketing strategies, because today with the globalization, you have the user, he has a lot of offers and a lot of promises that he's surrounding him in one or in the same domain. So he will always choose the one who can not only answer to one of his needs, but also the whole experience. So we try to develop the customer experience around it, to try really to make sure it's not only about a product or a service itself, but it's the whole thing around it. So we design the customer journey. We try to identify our gaps, where the customer here expects to have, I don't know, appearance on a website. He wants to do a phone call. He wants to have an after-sale services. So really based on a dedicated or specialized target group, you define and collect insights, which could be anyone is interacting with this target group customers. So it could be customer service, it could be salespeople, it could be technical supports. Anybody who has insights you can collect, and then you build your strategy related to experience.
Okay.
So it's really essential for marketing to build all of their strategies on customer insights, and also for the sales to know better, because most of the customers or the users don't really say what do they think. So understanding and observing people would really help you to meet their expectations. So it's an essential for us. Yeah.
Very essential. And I think we have time for one last question, or the questions are still coming in, by the way. But a more general one. You're lucky to be working for an organization that believes in design thinking, and it's easy to say it's part of their DNA, perhaps, in a constant innovation and thinking about sustainability, taking into consideration energy saving, etc. But how do you really embed this mindset in the DNA of one's organization? So if it's not already there, how do you bring it in?
So there's no secret source, but as I try to put the accent on the culture, is starting by working on the cultural aspect of allowing people to try, to fail, to start again. It starts with that. It starts with the mindsets that we saw earlier about authorizing people to go to places where they don't know. I think that's what's most difficult, is that we, as professionals, we like to be in the areas of knowledge. That's where we're safe. And what design thinking is asking us to do is to go in where it's unsafe, where we don't know, where we need to learn again. And it's not something that is used to being done, because we're called upon, when in our professional lives, we're called upon like experts, professionals, and we have to be certain of what we're doing. We have to get into a culture where it's okay to not be an expert, and it's okay to need to learn. And that's where, when you learn, that's when you discover. And discovering is where you'll find new ways of doing things and new areas where you can innovate. So it's working first on those cultural aspects and embedding it really in the way that people think. So it has a link to HR and managing people, because you don't manage them the same way.
Wow, that's great, I think. And then personally, I love how you know, the design also, the images that you showed about how the brain should converge and diverge, think big and then think back, just reverse the way we normally think and make it more, you know, out of the box, irregular. I think it's already, it inspires innovation and getting out of your comfort zone and really, you know, opening one's mind to new ideas and concepts. I know we're already past time, but I have one last question, which I think is worthy of addressing, if you don't mind taking it. How can you create a prototype if you're working on a service, not a product? So the question is, it would cost more, yes or no? And how would you test it if it's a service?
Yeah, not necessarily. For a start, you can prototype a service by, for instance, doing a scenario. Like you would do a customer journey. If you do an imagined customer journey, you'd say, well, what's the first step? Where's the first point of contact? Where's the second point of contact? How is that contact happening? Do I need, is it by phone? Is it by web? Is it, you know, so you go through it. Yeah, you can go through it like a customer journey. And then you can see what tools you need. You can associate, you know, what people you need, what you need to put into place for that specific service. So it's really into designing, giving shape to a service, is putting it into visual artifacts, and you could do it, you know, with Post-its, and that enables you to move them around as you're going along. And, you know, well, I got this stage wrong, and then you swap it the other way around, and you get it in the right order. So no, it can be really quick and cheap and easy to do, and not doing it the heavy way straight away. And as you go along, the more assured you are with the design of your service, then you can go out and maybe show it to some users without necessarily having all the tools set up for it, but skipping through, maybe having them imagine that this is a situation and this is how they would go through, what would be their input on it. So it doesn't have to be heavy and costly. It can be through an interview that you can go through those topics of designing a service.
That's wonderful. I think these are, I think this is a great closing to our webinar. We're getting a lot of messages just thanking you for a very interesting and a very insightful session. So once again, we really, really appreciate this. Thank you for your time. And it was a pleasure having you with us, sharing such, you know, amazing knowledge, and you're being very generous with your time. You've been very generous. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Summer. Thank you.
Have a wonderful evening. Thank you.
Yeah, you too. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.